The joke slipped out on a night when exhaustion had worn every filter away, the kind of careless humor that comes from someone who has nothing left to lose. It happened in a small, dimly lit kitchen where the ceiling fan rattled like it might fall, where unpaid bills sat stacked beside a sink full of dishes, and where a single father named Michael Harper leaned against the counter wondering how his life had narrowed down to survival mode. He never imagined that a throwaway line, said with a tired half-smile to ease an awkward moment, would pull the future straight into his driveway by sunrise. And he definitely never imagined that the woman he said it to, a reserved corporate executive named Rachel Collins, would take him seriously enough to change both their lives forever. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet moments that reshape destinies, take a second right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this exist because people still believe small acts can lead to big miracles. Michael's days had become predictable in the worst way. Wake up before dawn, pack lunch for his 7-year-old son Ethan, rush him to school, then drive across town to a warehouse job that barely covered rent. His wife had passed away 2 years earlier after a sudden illness, leaving behind silence that still echoed in every room. The house they lived in was modest and aging, a rented place on the edge of a quiet Ohio town, but it held the last pieces of a life that once felt whole. Every night, Michael promised himself he would do better, be stronger, figure it out. Every night, he fell asleep on the couch with worry pressing on his chest like a weight. Rachel Collins entered his life by accident. Her car broke down on a rain-soaked road not far from Michael's neighborhood, her phone battery nearly dead, her heels sinking into mud as she tried to flag down help. She was the CEO of a fast-growing logistics company, though nothing about that night reflected power or wealth. She looked tired, soaked, and alone. Michael happened to be driving home after a late shift when he saw her stranded. He offered help without hesitation, towing her car with a neighbor's old truck and letting her dry off inside his house while waiting for roadside assistance. The kitchen smelled like reheated soup, and Ethan slept on the couch under a blanket that had seen better days. They talked quietly, not about careers or money, but about exhaustion, loss, and how life had a way of knocking people off their feet without warning. Michael tried to lighten the mood, joking that with how often unexpected things landed in his life, she might as well move in. He laughed it off immediately, embarrassed by his own words, and Rachel smiled politely, assuming it was just humor born of stress. By midnight, her car was taken care of, and she thanked him with a sincerity that lingered longer than expected. The next morning began like any other, until it didn't. Michael was tying Ethan's shoelaces when a sleek black SUV rolled to a stop in front of the house. It didn't belong on that street, where most cars were older and dented. When Rachel stepped out, dressed sharply and carrying a leather folder, Michael felt his stomach drop. She looked like a completely different person in daylight, confident and composed, yet her eyes still carried the same quiet heaviness from the night before. She explained that she had nowhere to stay nearby due to a sudden corporate dispute and a hotel mishap, and she remembered his joke. Instead of laughing it off, she asked if the offer still stood, even temporarily. What followed was not a fairy tale overnight transformation, but a tense adjustment filled with unspoken boundaries and cautious trust. Rachel took the guest room, paid rent without being asked, and left early every morning for meetings that seemed to carry the weight of empires. Michael continued his routine, still packing lunches and counting dollars, unsure how a woman who commanded boardrooms now shared his fridge and his struggles. Ethan watched everything with wide-eyed curiosity, sensing change without understanding it. Slowly, the house began to feel different. Not richer, but lighter. Rachel fixed the broken porch step one evening without comment. Michael found groceries stocked with healthier food. They shared dinners when schedules allowed, talking about values instead of resumes. Rachel learned about Ethan's love for drawing, and Michael learned that behind her success was a childhood marked by foster homes and instability. Neither of them fit the stereotype the other had assumed. The real challenge came when Michael lost his warehouse job due to downsizing. He tried to hide it, but stress has a way of surfacing. Rachel noticed the quiet panic, the way his shoulders slumped, the nights he stayed awake staring at the wall. Instead of offering charity, she offered opportunity, suggesting he apply for a training role at her company, one that valued discipline and empathy over degrees. Michael resisted at first, pride clashing with desperation, but he eventually accepted the chance to try. The days that followed tested him more than any physical labor ever had. He studied late into the night, stumbled through interviews, and doubted himself constantly. Rachel kept her distance professionally, refusing to influence the process, even when it would have been easy. When Michael was finally hired, not because of who he knew but because of what he proved, the victory felt earned in a way he hadn't felt since before his wife's passing. As weeks turned into months, the house became a place of healing. Michael gained confidence, Ethan laughed more freely, and Rachel softened in ways success had never allowed before. Yet tension lingered, the unspoken question of what they were to each other and how temporary this arrangement might be. Rachel eventually revealed that her company was relocating its headquarters, and she would be moving across the country. The silence that followed felt heavier than any argument. On her last night in the house, the three of them shared a quiet dinner. No grand speeches, no promises. Just gratitude. Rachel left early the next morning, the SUV disappearing down the street just as quietly as it had arrived. Michael thought that was the end of the chapter, another brief connection life allowed before moving on. But kindness has a way of circling back. Weeks later, Michael received notice that his training role was expanding into a full-time leadership position, based on a recommendation submitted anonymously. The letter mentioned resilience, integrity, and the ability to lead with compassion. Michael knew exactly who had written it. Around the same time, a package arrived for Ethan, filled with art supplies and a note encouraging him to never stop creating. Life didn't become perfect, but it became hopeful. Michael moved into a better home, still modest, still grounded. He volunteered at a roadside assistance program on weekends, remembering how one moment of help changed everything. And months later, on a visit back to Ohio for business, Rachel stopped by, not as a CEO needing shelter, but as a friend checking in on a family that had unknowingly saved her during her own moment of collapse. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that simple kindness can rewrite futures, please take a moment to like this video, share it, and subscribe. Your support keeps stories like this alive. Before the ending, we have one special request for you. Comment below with the words, "I believe in second chances," if you think small acts of kindness still matter. In the end, Michael realized the joke was never really about someone moving in. It was about opening a door, even when life had taught him to keep it shut. And sometimes, when you open that door, the future shows up the very next morning, ready to change everything.